Wonderful. We're already having our first participants join in the call today. Good day, everyone, and welcome to this very special roundtable on the opportunities and the barriers for women in engineering in 2023 and in our future. I'm Christina Rebel. I'm co-founder of WikiFactory, an online platform for collaboration from design to production. I'm honored to be chair for today's discussion, which is also brought to us in collaboration with Critical Making, an EU research program. And I'm very grateful to have you, Teresa, that is joining us from the consortium. And following this great panel that I will briefly introduce now, I will be sharing some of our research outputs. Firstly, I would like to express my sincere thanks to all the panelists here who have come across from 4 continents today. We're in, I think, 4 different time zones. And your contributions, I think, will undoubtedly enrich us today because you all have such unique experiences and perspectives. And therefore, I can see how you're going to bring such invaluable insights into these challenges and opportunities faced by women in engineering. To start introducing these wonderful women, I would like to first introduce Paola Zanchetta. She, and I can attest to this, is a creative and empathic human with a hybrid technical background in design, specialized in digital fabrication technologies, and is currently working in the context of open source hardware with waste and circular materials. Her work strives to contribute to a more sustainable, sensitive, inclusive, regenerative, and a better distributed world. Thank you, Paula. Thank you as well to Christine Ayitso-Kutwa. She's a creative designer and technical trainer based in Nairobi, Kenya. She's passionate about human-centered product designs and has a focused interest in STEM education and sustainability. Christine spends most of her time training students on how to convert their ideas and transforming them into innovative products through ideation, prototyping, and manufacturing using digital fabrication technology, such as CNC, laser cutters, and 3D printers, all the machines that we all love. Thank you very much for joining us, Christine from Nairobi. I'm also very happy to welcome Pradita Pradhan. She's one of the technical leaders responsible for bringing the first digital fabrication lab in Nepal, Fab Lab Nepal. She's currently co-leading this space, and she's applying her technical and managerial skills to develop innovative humanitarian solutions for Nepal. Alongside with this, she's also board member of Impact Hub Kathmandu and a member of Global Innovation Gathering, who's also part of Critical Making, the research program I mentioned before. Last but not least, of our panelists, we have Karen Lee. She's a mechanical engineering student at the University of California, Riverside. She's helping their team. She's part of the Highlander racing team that's preparing for the acclaimed electric car challenge of the Formula One competition. Formula One has a student-run competition, and I'm very excited to see that more and more teams like Highlander Racing that Karen is part of is choosing to compete in the electric car challenge, which is amazing. And in her spare time, Karen enjoys indulging in, of course, Formula One, but of course, fashion too. Love it. During this roundtable, thanks to these panelists, we will be discussing 2 critical questions that is quite obvious from the title, but I want to restate it again. We'll be looking at, on the one hand, what is the barriers that each of you see or have felt or have experienced as a woman participating in engineering, whether in your own personal experience or at large, so focusing on the opportunities, and also on the other side, the barriers that you have faced as a woman in engaging around engineering. Engineering in the widest sense, not trying to be constraining here. Engineering is, whether it involves design, it involves manufacturing. I like highlighting engineering, given the fact that it is typically understood to be very technical. And in celebration of Women's Month, I think it's just such a timely conversation because manufacturing engineering is going through huge change, and those changes are the implications are very varied. So today, with such unique perspectives. I think we're going to have a very holistic perspectives on what we can do to boost participation and resolve some of these barriers for women in engineering. And whilst we will be listening to the panelists, I would really like to make this session as interactive as possible. So all of the participants here, as you are listening to the experiences, the insights shared by the panelists here, I encourage you to share your reactions, whether you resonate or have felt something similar. Please do share with us your reactions. And also, I would like to make this interactive where if you have your own experiences on the opportunities or on the barriers, please do send them over into the chat. Because thanks to all of your contributions, including those of the panelists and of Teresa, we'll be presenting or producing a report to summarize some of these insights and sharing it back to you, hopefully by next week. So without further ado, I would like to thank you again. As co-founder of Wikifactory, I'm committed to develop a platform that can really emphasize inclusivity, diversity, and innovation. And I really feel like this roundtable aligns with not only my personal values, but that of Wikifactory and of the partners that we're part of, not least with Critical Making. So thank you, all of you, the panelists, the attendees. And I would like to first start by giving the word to Paola. Thank you, Paola.
Thank you very much, Christina. And so I'm going to prepare my screen. Okay. Everybody sees it correctly? Yeah?
Fantastic.
Perfect. Okay, so thank you again for the introduction and for the community who will be today listening to us, and also, of course, to Wikifactory and Critical Making for organizing this very needed panel. So when I was first approached by Christina and the Wikifactory team to be part of this panel, I thought that it would be very interesting to not only bring my perspective on the topic, but to bring a community-based idea of how and which are like the barriers and the opportunities of women in STEM. So I had the great opportunity to interview the director and part of the team of the Polytechnic University of Madrid, where I did study my degree in industrial design engineering. But I also had the opportunity to research the voices of all the women in STEM of my socials community. And I did also short research with GPT, just to also give it a part of the voice in this research. So I want to really say thank you to all the women who were open to share their voices with me and with us today. And probably one of the most interesting outputs of this research is how barriers are already present in our lives since a very young age. So since more or less the same of 6-year-old is where we firstly get to know these barriers, and then all these barriers are going to keep accompanying us during our full life as women in STEM, starting from gender bias. So gender bias, it's probably the barrier that is going to be always present. And it starts from our educational context and our family context. And by reading all your answers in the Google Forms, I realized how important it's, in this case, the educational context in order to enable and disenable our participation in STEM. And this barrier is going to be determined since a very young age on our participation in STEM, but also the lack of role models. It's also very important when entering a STEM career. Based on your answers, the presence of a mentor, of a leader, someone who will in some way influence our decision making or support us on our decision of taking part of STEM. And because of women being completely underrepresented in this field during the most of our history, it's very difficult to find inspiration or models in women. But I also thought it was interesting to notice that most of the times these mentors are found within our families, and most of the time the figures, the roles are taken by our fathers. And this is something that we will come across next. Another barrier that it's very interesting to notice is our self-demanding feature. Women are very, very, very self-demanding. And one of the anecdotes that one of the teachers from my university shared with me is that she always, in the first university with the students that are just entering the university in engineering, she makes these exams where she already gives the answers to the students and asks them to self-correct the exams. And always in the past 20 years that she has been making this exercise, men are very soft by correcting their exams, and women are very, very, very hard and punish their mistakes in a very hard way. So I think this is interesting to take notice of this barrier that is probably very influenced by the previous two barriers that I just explained. And this self-demanding future will came again in the professional field in terms of the imposter syndrome. A lot of women are currently feeling this issue through their professional field. And then, of course, the work-life balance issues have been always very present. And I'm optimistic on the future generation since the roles are already changing and there is more support from our families or husbands in this context. But of course, it's not just a matter of family support, it's also a matter of the professional field support. And we really need to change the policies in this context in both directions to make a more equitative field and to support women entering STEM. And last, in terms of barriers, it's interesting to notice that, for example, in Spain, just the 9% of the leaders in STEM are women. And the main reasons why, if we have to consider both the public and the private sector, probably in the public, it's because of the time and the efforts needed to get leadership position in this context until the moment, because of the family role, a woman hadn't had the opportunity to really push into this direction. And in the private sector, it's very present, as I said earlier, the imposter syndrome between women. So this is just a very small recap of the barriers that I noticed by analyzing your answers to the research. And in terms of opportunities, we really need to visualize STEM in general, not only for women, but we really need to visualize STEM and the opportunities that are in this field within the young generations. Because at the moment there is a lack of interest in general in young, both girls and boys, in the STEM careers, and as everybody knows, are very, very needed as many others fields in order to have a greater future. And then besides the visibilization, we need to start the visibilization by approaching the young generation, so showing what can be done and focusing on visibilizing woman success cases in this context. Also, another opportunity that I see in this context is to increase of the female role models in family education. So as I said earlier, most of the answers that I got from the firms, from the community, explained that their models have been normally their fathers or teachers. And I have hope in the idea that there are already a lot of women joining, and we are like getting more participation in STEM. So in the next generations, women will have a greater impact and will be inspiring other women to take actions in this direction. And then, of course, the community approach to women in STEM. So not only not working alone, but working in community, and especially women supporting women. So sorority is a very important factor to take into consideration. And because we already have a lot of barriers, as we already saw in this context, and it's important to collaborate, but also take into consideration the support of men. And I really like this quote from someone of you who said that the woman in STEM movement should be led by women and supported by men. So we really need to take the, leader the movement, and men should support us. And another opportunity and practice that we are already taking into consideration, but we should keep pushing, it's to create multicultural and diversity, to bring diversity in teams, because the barriers of women in STEM are not only related to gender, are also related to many other parts. And one of it's also inclusivity and the cultural aspect. So we know that when we work in a multicultural environment, and when we bring diversity to the table, we have much tolerance, and this is exactly what we need to also get more acceptance from mainly the main environment of women in STEM, participating in STEM. And then last but not least, it's also interesting to analyze how a lot of you thought that women personalities and futures that are very much more predominant in women than in men should be appreciated and taken into consideration in the new leaders' profiles, since we have communication, empathy, understanding, collaboration, resilience, and emotional intelligence, all of them very needed skills to have when leading teams and leading projects that maybe till this moment haven't been so represented within the leaders of STEM, and that will help to bring tolerance and to bring diversity to the teams. And just to finish my intervention today, I kind of summarize all your messages for the younger generations of women and the current women in STEM. And it will be like this: believe in your passion, work on it every day, collaborate with your community to create a significant impact on the planet, inspire other women to follow your path, and never give up. Stay focused, even in hard times. You are more than capable. So I hope this participation in this panel will inspire a lot of other women. And as I said, I conducted the research, and I have an open documentation of it that I will share with you in the chat. So if someone is interested of knowing more and dig in, can read it and learn from it. So thank you very much, and I look forward to know the next interventions.
Oh, thank you, Paula. It's so sweet because of the research responses. That one really stood out to me. But all of their final words on the future of women were so encouraging. Thank you for doing that research, and we would love to weave it with a report that we'll share back. In terms of housekeeping, I realized that the chat is not available to attendees. My sincere apologies. So this whole time we've been mentioning this chat, and I can see that it's only to the panelists. Sorry for that confusion. There's still a Q&A. Please send over any questions that you might have, and I would hope that we can keep this interactive. If anything resonates, do give us some reaction, and we'll take note of that too. I wanted to bridge now to Christine, and with some of the research findings that you found, like that mention of how important it is to develop community, because Christine, I understand that you love to build local communities, how to empower them to do product innovation in Nairobi, and very much looking forward to your contributions today. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. I'd like to begin by telling you my story. I'm a designer by training. I have found myself in the engineering field due to the influence of a couple of my friends who are women in engineering. They invited me to a makerspace in 2017 to see what they were working on. And at the time, they were working on automating a mannequin. It had features such as laser eyes, speech function, and moving arms. And I was just blown away by this project. I thought it was pretty cool. So coincidentally, I saw the need for aesthetics because the engineering perspective was purely functional. And we thought it would be even cooler to design eyeglasses and other things. In order to contribute, I realized I had to understand the basic engineering principles in order to understand where they're coming from and how to apply my knowledge and skills. I ended up participating in collaborative projects that involved the redesigning of our case for an air monitoring sensor. This was a project that was capitalizing on citizen science to monitor air pollution levels within the outskirts of Nairobi. We needed to design the case in a way that it could be easily fitted onto a motorbike or bicycle without looking out of place. This opened me up to a lot of opportunities that involved me working in the engineering context. I discovered that I was interested in some of the digital fabrication tools, and with a bit of help, I was able to learn how to use new softwares and operate machines. Then I was able to merge my design interests with this technology, which allowed me to transfer my artwork onto different materials like wood, and that opened up my opportunity for me to pursue a business idea, and that's how Chris Craft was born. During this process, I encountered so many amazing women in the engineering space, and unfortunately, due to their career and life demands, they don't get to spend enough time in the makerspace as they'd love to. But one of the things that came out strongly in our interactions was just how much we underestimate the value that different disciplines bring to the table. For instance, at the Fab Lab, we had an amazing opportunity to locally design and fabricate medical equipment for our local hospitals in a low resource setting. My engineering friends designed a suction machine. However, it was rather plain, and the doctors encountered challenges using it. When designers were brought in, we designed a very aesthetically appealing machine on CAD, but unfortunately, the designs as they were could not be fabricated because of the technology that was available to us for fabrication. So when our teams began working together, the engineers and designers were able to come up with a compromise that accounted for the design and materials that were available. And this led to a better final design of the functional unit that works even better for the end user. So my work with Fab Lab Winam as a project coordinator influenced my work in STEM education and social innovation. I was able to work with young learners between 10 and 20 years of age, introducing them to robotics and 2D and 3D design, as well as how to operate machines. This was quite an interesting experience for me because I realized that there was need for our communities to start learning how to use technology at a young age. And I didn't get the opportunity to learn how to use these machines until I was in my university, after university. And therefore, I feel that there's opportunity for engineers and other professionals to actually dive into these spaces of social impacts and social innovations and help our young learners translate their ideas into products that make sense for their communities. In my opinion, there are both intrinsic and extrinsic barriers to women involvement in engineering. One of the intrinsic barriers I came to experience was, like Paula said, we tend to sell ourselves short, especially when it comes to male-dominated fields such as engineering, manufacturing, and design. We tend to get into these places with a lot of caution, and then with a bit of time we get comfortable, and then we start running with ideas, and sometimes imposter syndrome kicks in. We feel like we're not qualified, and this affects how we approach opportunities that are presented to us. An extrinsic barrier for my community would be accessibility to makerspaces that have machines and that give you room to make or tinker with things freely. In Kenya, it would be challenging for a maker living in the rural settings to access these spaces due to proximity issues. Despite the fact that some of the makers in the urban areas might have access to these spaces, they may not be able to participate in Fab Labs that have membership models because they may not be able to afford this as well. Another barrier I see is when it comes to regulations and policies that govern the workings of the Fab Labs and makerspaces. As women, we have other roles and responsibilities, and it often comes down to whether there's enough flexibility to allow us to work with the male engineers on a project outside the standard working hours or working days. We come from a fairly cultural background, and that has a very specific we have very specific gender roles, and sometimes that may mean you may have to come in later or leave earlier or work on weekends because of other responsibilities at home. There are several opportunities and platforms that I have found useful, and I think it would be helpful to be part of. For a start, platforms like this that begin conversations around women in engineering. They increase visibility and raise awareness in key areas which we can exert continuous action to challenge mindsets and perceptions about the work that we do. And participating in open collaborative projects can help kill the bias or just demystify notions and misconceptions that limit our progress. There's an increase in collaboration across our continents, and these interactions are challenging the way we ideate and create as we improve the quality of our outputs. Maker communities have provided a platform for different professionals to converge and create. For instance, the African Makerspaces Network connects Fab Labs in African countries, and there's so many activities that we engage in, and there are so many opportunities to secure funding for our projects, as well as support platforms that support open collaboration. I would like to encourage women who work within engineering communities to engage with artistic minds and creative thinkers with varied experiences in order to build on their expertise. I believe this will go a long way in creating well-rounded technological solutions that are relevant and relatable to all stakeholders, irrespective of the degree of technological know-how. These collaborations also help in expanding virtual networks, which lead to increase in access to resources and opportunities. It would be great to have platforms such as the distributed design platform, but for African makers, where one can openly collaborate on a project with a virtual team, especially if your project requires expertise that is not within your locality. I believe these virtual connections will just go a long way in improving prototypes and the quality of products that we produce. Uh, Lastly, I believe as human beings, we are inherently innovative. If we are passionate about something, it is possible to gain the skills required for one to function in that field. Learning requires time and accessibility. For those who are unable to access the makerspaces, they can be able to access knowledge building resources online. Um, for instance, one might decide to use YouTube videos to learn how to design or learn how to work with technical equipment and learn engineering principles that people are using to design certain things. This can also help to boost their participation in the field. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. That was excellent. I loved hearing that story. I couldn't agree more on the point of accessibility, and given just how much content is now becoming available to learn on all aspects from design through to manufacturing, and not just even, let's say, how to use your own 3D printer, but actually how to go and take your product to injection molding. All of these tools are more readily available. Now is the time to leave our imposter syndrome behind and definitely encourage that we explore, that we experiment in and take this on as a challenge within ourselves. And I do think that the Fab Lab network has been crucial in making this more accessible. I think during COVID, the very fact that it was the Fab Lab maker movement that came in and started designing and engineering and producing the face shields, the ventilators, the valves, and it wasn't from private companies. It was actually through the network, through the community. It just shows how good these spaces are in engaging stakeholders, the broader set of stakeholders in the opportunities that these new technologies bring to society. It's super exciting. And I would love to bridge now to Pradita, who also is part of the Fab Lab network. You created and set up Fab Lab Nepal. So over to you, Pradita. Thank you, Christine, and welcome, Pradita.
Namaste and good afternoon and good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for having me here. Thank you to all the organizers for organizing such a session to learn and share from each other, basically. So I think I'd like to start introducing Fab Lab Nepal itself. So Fab Lab Nepal is the first digital fabrication lab in the country, which is also a humanitarian lab. Our main idea is basically to build capacity, provide research and development platform for entrepreneurs, for innovators, and also, of course, for hobbyists and enthusiasts. Well, now we've been conducting many programs, basically, again, coming back to build capacity on different sectors. Could be safety, could be, STEM education, plastic recycling, so et cetera, et cetera. Now, I think I would like to talk the barriers, to participation for women in engineering. So a bit of a background from my own background. I'm an electronics engineer, and after my graduation, I did start a project, co-founded a project called Miss in Technology, Miss Tech. So that was basically to empower women, girls in tech. But before that, I studied in a all-girls school, and my one barrier that I faced was not having a role model, female role model, to be specific. But of course, my narrative has changed over time, over year, with my with my experiences. But having said that, it took me initially did take me a lot of time to adjust myself to start working with male colleagues. And even now, we are a team of 7 at Fab Lab Nepal, and I'm the only female. But I've been very lucky to have a very supportive, very understanding, and encouraging team. But I do see things that needs to change at a larger scale. Like a couple of things that I would like to highlight, I would like to mention. are again coming, from the experience of working with girls, working basically organizing sessions, contents for them. Like whenever we are, let's say, brainstorming about developing courses for them, especially for females, it's not like just about meeting the girls or encouraging them, empowering them, and saying like, hey, this tech is for all and not gender specific, but also it's about convincing their parents, their family members, and sadly sometimes institutions as well, that if they really want to, let's say, go to a space such as Fab Lab, it's a safe space, and which could give you, or which could give them exposure and add value to their lives, to their careers. So yeah, of course, I'm like short of focusing on younger group here, but that's where the change starts to happen, right? I think I would also like to share an example. So it was a recent one. I think it actually happened yesterday. So I was talking to one of the girls to basically get her final confirmation for a training program happening this April. So I called her because she mentioned that she was, interested in the program, and we had still given them like a couple of days time to reconfirm so that she could, talk to her parents, family. And then yesterday when I called her, she said like she was really interested, but then because of studies, because of time constraints, her parents did not allow her to take part in this program, so which was a bit sad. But then lastly, I think like, so all in all, like it's it's not just about encouragement, but also about like providing a sense of, let's say, security, trust, support, where these young minds can feel safe and be able to like, let's say, openly explore more, right? So yeah, these were more like barriers, but having said, like, there are also opportunities, on the brighter side of it. um as we look into it, as we say, like, these of course, like it's there's like this male dominance in tech field but there is also a lot of growing effort in empowering, encouraging, supporting women in tech, which is really good, and which could, really bridge this divide. So as diversifying engineering it can really strengthen the ability to face global challenges, right? Um, so, and of course, like, so in context of Nepal, what I've seen is like there's been a focus around STEM education. There's like people have started valuing STEM education. There are like many organizations working around it. So basically, focus around STEM education as at an early age is something to look for. And in fact, like like, because there are so many, of course, like there are so many training sessions happening in the city areas. Hopefully it will start spreading outside the city areas as well. So when we talk about opportunities for greater participation of women in engineering, firstly, I think understanding the skill gaps and stereotypes which could then be addressed, let's say, by evaluating possible interventions to increase diversity. And it could be done through like different programs, different platforms, like even like, platforms as such, where we are coming together and discussing or, learning from each other. So these could be really nice to start with. And then, this could have, let's say, positively influence, attitudes towards interested females, then who could in future could be a part or could participate in like different tech, like the things that they are basically interested in. And all these could be possible through like the trainings that we could, it could have some impact, like through the trainings that we provide through equity, and it could be something equitable practices, equitable accesses through digital skills. It could be digital safety, and having innovations that's more like inclusive, which would not also which would not just let's say benefit women or girls, but as a society as a whole. So yeah, so that yeah, I think that's it. And thank you so much, and I look forward to hearing from you all. Thank you.
Namaste, Pradita. That was really wonderful to highlight those key concerns of safety, security. I can imagine in certain contexts that being so important to the families. That was a really, really insightful story here. And I'm happy to say that the chat is running again. So please do share your additional experiences, your additional perspectives, like we hoped in the beginning, readily available and open for you to share them. Thank you. And that way we can also involve them in the shared report. Thanks as well to the questions already in the Q&A. I look forward to that. And now to bridge to our last panelist, Karen. It's really wonderful to have you here today. And I look forward to what you have to say. Over to you.
Thank you, Christina. And thank you for, oh, sorry, I have a heater on because it's so cold. Sorry about that. But thank you for inviting me here and gathering us all to talk about our experiences and our stories. This is such a cool opportunity and I really appreciate it. And to the other participants here with me, I've really enjoyed listening to your stories, your research, and your observations on this topic. So thank you for that as well. My name is Karen, and I'm a manufacturing engineer for Highlander Racing, my university's Formula student organization, where a group of entirely college students design and manufacture an open-wheeled race car from scratch every year. And so being a manufacturing engineer for our team means I'm helping to produce things like our car's suspension and aerodynamic package tabs. We're helping to design the uprights and wheel hubs of the car and things like that. So being a mechanical engineering major in a motorsports club, I am currently one of 4 girls on our team of about 60 people. And something that I've really noticed with new members and even seasoned members for girls is that most of them are really too shy to actively participate because they're so intimidated by the overwhelming male environment. I am very proud of our organization and what we do, and that we are able to provide so much real-world engineering experience with both design and manufacturing. But I do think that as a girl, it's really quite difficult to get your foot in that door. And I've noticed that even once I was able to do that, I kind of had to evolve my personality and act as a mirror ball, reflecting the personalities of those around me. I did this in an effort to try to be more accepted by my teammates because I truly did feel so excluded. Even though I'm sure the exclusion wasn't intentional, I don't think they're trying to leave me out of things. I think it's just subtle and the way it goes. And when I'm at school around my teammates, I sometimes wonder how much of my actual personality I'm displaying, just because I'm not sure if I would be comfortable sharing my true self with my teammates, just because I don't know if I would be taken seriously if I share my interests that don't include cars or racing. And this feeling of being the extreme minority is genuinely such a horrible feeling that I never expected to experience. This is a little embarrassing to admit, but before I started university, I was kind of under the impression that the stereotypes of having to be a woman in STEM were maybe a little bit exaggerated, and that the extreme male to female ratio was either not as bad as people really made it out to be, or would be less of an issue than people were warning me about. But I ended up getting extremely humbled by thinking this way because it is far worse than I was expecting. Because for me, the fact that there are so few women in my major and on my team is one of the biggest issues I've encountered in college. Me personally, I feel like my very few female friends in my major and I have had to show not just proficiency, but exceptionality in order to be respected by a lot of our peers. People say men don't gossip, but I've personally experienced otherwise. I've heard some pretty nasty and vicious things be said about girls that maybe aren't doing so well in classes that some of my other male classmates find easy. And even when we demonstrate our passion and drive and love for engineering, my friends and I have still encountered issues with our professors or advisors disregarding all the work we've put into this field and into the team by just maybe assuming that our hard work just doesn't exist. I've had people assume I was a non-STEM major even while my laptop was right in front of me with SolidWorks open or Fusion 360 open to CADs and CAMs of our car, or even while I was in the machine shop with my safety goggles on, holding my calipers and a block of aluminum that I machined. I've had the machine shop manager just assume that I was in there just for fun, just to look around maybe. And one time I met my school's dean of engineering at an awards ceremony for Highlander racing, and he took one look at me and asked if I was a business major. I told him no, and I asked him why he thought that so quickly, and his answer was because of my dyed hair. I thought that was pretty strange. that was the actual answer he gave me, and these strange kinds of assumptions, I feel, are very detrimental to any motivation and passions girls might have for this field. And I must sound kind of repetitive, I know, stating an issue that has been prevalent for as long as women have been in engineering. But that might just be because I've never truly experienced it in this scale until I came to college and just realized how disheartening it can be for women. And I really do hope that as we go on, women can find more of a support system in this field, not just with other women, but hopefully with their male colleagues as well, and be more accepted and have less things to feel intimidated by, so that women can in engineering can discover their passion for this field. I know that was a little bit short maybe compared to my other my fellow speakers, but that about wraps it up for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. I was very moved by your contribution. Thank you, really. Thanks for being vulnerable and highlighting just how much the automotive sector is within the most technical, inside engineering, complex. I understand you're also doing the electric car challenge, so you're just even another layer of complexity. And in moments, it was hard to chew. And thank you, because, well, I hope you feel at home here. And for reference to others, Wikifactory is sponsoring Karen's team this season in their Formula One racing. And I think I'm going to do a little bit of an intervention. I think your story rocks so much that I would like to, from our side, of whatever we echo of your promotion and your successes, I would really like to emphasize you so that indeed you can be a role model for the classes to come, because you're really paving the way for others to join in your path. And I think this really bridges so nicely to Teresa, because this is why we're doing this research. A lot of critical making is to look at inclusivity, diversity, and openness in making, and actually deliver interventions and resources to boost that diversity. So thank you, Karen, and over to you, Teresa.
Thank you, Christina. And well, it's really amazing, all the stories that we heard today. And this is comparable to the stories that we heard also throughout our project. What do we do in critical making? Here we look at these unequal gender relations in the maker movement specifically, as we think that the maker movement is really an interesting place to get involved in STEM. And yeah, also in the maker movement, we can still see a very strong dominance of cis male members. So we, in our project, we engaged diverse members of the global maker community to develop material and resources and methods with us that help to address this gender bias that we are seeing here. And when we studied gender in our project, we understand this concept a bit more broader, and we aimed specifically at engaging female, inter-trans, and non-binary persons in the community of makers. As we are now nearly at the end of our project, we start to share the results of what we were doing together with the maker community. And this is where I would like to share just short insights into what we did, and I will share my screen for that. Just to maybe spark your interest, this is the Critical Making website, and here we have a chapter on gender, equality, and technology and making. And you can see first material, and it will become more and more in the next 3, 4, 5, 6 months. And we don't see this material carved in stone. We think that this is something that really should evolve and live, and ideally live by the community. So it's never fixed and never finished, this work. So what you can see, for instance, are inspirational stories. So many stories heard today, and these are more stories of amazing people who made their way into making by overcoming all these kind of barriers that you are mentioning today. And these are really similar barriers. And I was also so much impressed that the barriers are the same wherever we are in this world. So this is really very interesting. And what we have also is these recommendations how to create an inclusive makerspace. And this is maybe what was mentioned before. So how can makerspaces become safe places and welcoming places for all gender to be part and take part? So we have tried to really create some very practical hands-on tips on what can you do in a makerspace to involve different target groups and different members. So again, this is only really first short introduction, and it should evolve and live and continue. And maybe because there was one question in the chat on what kind of activities can there be to involve young girls in technology, and we have also here a collection of gender cases where we present some ideas to spark the interest, to give you ideas on how this can be done. So that's what I wanted to show. And as you will see when you go there and you're really interested to follow up on this, there's always a way to get in feedback, get in contact with us, share your ideas, share your inspirations, share your comments on what we are doing here or joining our community. And with these words, I would hand over to Christina again. Thanks for having me here in this panel.
Thank you, Teresa. And really great that you bridge it in such an agile way with the question in the chat. Thanks, Jay Peterson. And also Jared, you both made a very good question on how you as men can be an agent of change in your own right. And it's a fantastic question that we also received from Diana on how to engage young boys into accepting, engaging more women in STEM. So all of the resources from Critical Making are great starting points. And I wanted to also bring that to the table, saying that there's been, again, 3 questions roughly on the same vein. What does, if someone is particularly inspired to answer this question, I would maybe just say that within the engineering manufacturing space, I think there's a really interesting stream within soft robotics and how it's used for wearables and how it's used for fashion, that it sneaks through the arts through the back door, which is maybe how a young lady, young girl can initially get interested in technology and engineering, but then you realize that you open a whole ecosystem and of opportunities in learning how to work with sensors and learning how to use new manufacturing technologies to do these cool soft robotics. And it just puts you in such a cutting edge. There's just a handful of people that are pushing the envelope on soft robotics, but there's a lot of knowledge out there in many cases in the Fab Labs. But I wanted to open to the floor. What can men and boys do, whether in schools, universities, at work, in their organizations, to encourage greater participation? Does someone have a particular point to add to that?
For the question that Jared said in the Q&A, being a GDSC leader at university, I personally think that a good way to bring girls on board and have them be motivated and have them have drive would just be to talk to them in a kind and welcoming manner, because that's something that I personally have not really experienced in Highlander racing at my university. I found that the guys mainly just stick to themselves, have conversations with themselves. They don't really talk to any of the girls, and the girls just huddle in a corner. So aside from, telling them all the benefits that your organization might have and like all the good points that it might bring to like their resume or life experience, I think that genuinely just talking to them in a welcoming manner would be one of the most effective ways to bring them on board, because that's something that I personally have not really experienced at school. I don't know if that helps.
I definitely think it does, Karen. So much is in the language. So much is in the language that we use in the day-to-day that can be either exclusionary or inclusive. Thank you for that contribution. We also have one additional point from Diana Kocher. I'm going to read it out. I think you all panelists can also hear it, can read it, sorry. So thanks, Diana. Great points and story around the transition from design to engineering. One of my passions is about bringing design aspects into engineering. So maybe this is a good question for you, Christine, on design thinking. And it's actually in the reverse. How can we bring concepts of design into engineering, especially relevant to consumer-facing products? Would love to hear more about your experiences working with engineers who do not understand design, and how do you manage that?
I think it takes a lot of, it's a learning curve on both ends, because we both need to sit down and collaborate and get to a place where we can compromise. In my experience, I have come to understand that people have a way of sticking to what they know more than what they don't know, and just being willing to learn and being willing to accept new ideas as they come, and trying out new things to see how that fits is, I'd like to, maybe that's a good option. I'm also thinking that in terms of just easing up on the competition, because sometimes your idea doesn't have to be the best, and in introducing new ideas and allowing other people to also just run with the idea adds to the project in general.
Thank you so much. And it is interesting because both in the question of language, there's a clash of language, whether in terms of inclusivity in gender, but I also find that in Wikifactory, we've got a community of over 140,000 designers and engineers. And I do notice that the way that a designer speaks of certain things, certain terminologies, might be at odds with how engineers and then how manufacturers actually discuss these things. And it could even be a great exercise to actually have a roundtable within your organization about the terminologies that we're all just throwing around, and no one's actually saying, well, I don't understand what you mean by that. What is the implications? What is the context behind that term? Because then we can actually throw those jargons out the window. And if it's useful, we'll use them and understand its context. We see this when we try to bring some aspects of say 3D printing, or even our own platform to users that are not engineers and designers. Like, what does a README or documentation mean? What is a bill of materials? A bill of materials is obvious to an engineer, but it's not to a designer, nor someone that's wanting to understand, okay, I want to make this solution. What is a bill of materials? Oh, you mean a shopping list? Got it. So much of language is actually exclusionary, and sometimes it's not even, we just adopt that language without actually realizing. So actually looking and having a session within your own space, whether the maker space or your team, and flagging on some of these, like those jargon terms, and unpacking them together, you realize that sometimes we're just adopting them without much consciousness. And it can lead to really good conversations, vulnerable conversations as to, ooh, you've been making me feel quite small there and feel quite untechnical. And perhaps that person never meant to be making you feel that way. Thank you so much for everyone. I really enjoyed this conversation. We already, the hour is up, and I want to be mindful for everyone's time, especially because we have people who started very early today, and like in the case with Pradita, it's very late for you now in Nepal. So thank you, first of all, to all the panelists, to you, Teresa, for representing critical making, for everyone that's given your comments and questions on chat. Our team, our Wikifactory team, is looking forward to creating this nice shared report on the insights that we've gathered here today, so that we can bring some of this knowledge back out to the world and promote it and encourage, and hopefully be a lighthouse for other women that would like to get involved in engineering, in manufacturing, in making. And I'll also be sharing a gift with the report. We're sponsoring, Wikifactory would like to sponsor 1,000 women out there that would benefit in using our tools free of charge, so that you can actually get the support from Wikifactory to, on the one hand, start your project up on the platform, perhaps engage manufacturers and our team to get your products to market. So if you or any of your friends have product innovation ideas that they need support with, we want to do this intervention and share a gift, not just to all attendees, but to all women in your networks and communities, so that you can have a little bit of a boost in your engineering and manufacturing path. Thank you so much again. Have a lovely evening, rest of the day.